Here we are again on Mental Health Mondays, where we talk to experts that are in the field of mental health or a guest that experiences or lives with a mental health challenge or a mental health advocate. And today I am a little sick from this week, and my guest actually today is also a little sick. So bear with us as we go through our Mental Health Monday today. Um, and my guest today is Alex. She is going to be talking to us about her experience with mental health and all the great nuggets that she wants to bring to us. So I will bring Alex in. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Hi, Kelly.
And I'm so sorry that you have COVID. That is not any fun, but I'm so thankful that you joined me today.
Yeah, I was. I hope I can do the whole time because I tire pretty easy. That's probably the hardest part. You're
Yeah.
tired, but you can't sleep.
Right, right. Yeah. And if we're at any point you're like, I'm done, that's totally fine too. We don't have to go the full time. So but I do want to introduce you to our audience and tell me a little bit about yourself and your experiences.
Okay. Well, oh gosh, I want to say 5, 6 years ago. After several attempts of uh suicidal ideologies, I finally got the right diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. Um, Ironically, I used to do stand up, and one of my jokes was men are bipolar, women have personalities. Little did I know that that was going to come to the forefront of my life back then. And the 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 personality disorder itself, borderline personality disorder, has many different caveats. I don't want to get into, all the technical or scientific behind it. Uh, that's for another time, and it's a lot deeper of a topic. But it came from post-traumatic stress syndrome, and uh, a lengthy abandonment and abuse as a child. Both my parents were alcoholics, and my mother's still an alcoholic. My father passed away this last year.
Mhm.
um, and the abandonment that I felt as a child, because no one, everybody said I was a crybaby and that I was too emotional and I was a drama queen and all of that. And and then when I got into my adult life, I was a phenomenal businesswoman. I've created phenomenal things and changed people's lives in ways I never thought I'd ever be able to. Everything I touched turned to gold, except when it came for myself. And in the end, when I stopped working, was because, basically, I came back here to Michigan because I couldn't afford to live in Colorado. And I went into treatment, suicide by cop. So I spent, my 72 plus some, and I was able to get the actual proper diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and then be able to start figuring it out and healing. I was really scared because I was like, I don't know if I want to relive all of this. I've put it all behind me. It never affected me, I thought.
Mhm.
But in reality, my success in life was also part of was because of the disorder. I was a very shy little girl, and when I uh at one point, I went from, I've worked for some of the biggest companies in the world, Citibank and some other local companies there in Colorado. I live in Michigan now, because we were living on the streets out there, but their affordable housing was not available. Um, People with mental health, they have to understand that, it's not just, that they have a mental disorder or a mental illness. Things like stability, access to healthcare, access to case management, um, is something that needs to change in this country, because this is a generational crisis. This is not something my mom is Currently, she suffers from narcissistic personality disorder, and it's horrible. My brother as well. Then neither of them want to admit it, or I always tell people, I didn't even get the interview. I got the paycheck because I got approved for disability without even an in-person interview. That's how sick I am, or I was at the time, and I still struggle. I still struggle to this day. I mean, but for about 6 years, every day I woke up and I wish that I hadn't. And it wasn't that, I was being selfish, that I wanted to, you know, um, I was feeling sorry for myself or anything. It's just that's the way my brain worked, because of when the abuse occurred in my life is when developmentally my body chemically, hormonally was not programmed to handle what I was experiencing. So my body did what it could do, and processed it the way that it did. And that's where the suicidal ideologies come from. I don't have control over waking up in the morning and wishing I hadn't. Um, I'm not a violent person. My brother used to beat me up bad when I was a kid. I've been in several domestic relationships that have been very, very violent. Um, and I even had a case where I got a domestic there in Denver. But if I had been properly diagnosed a long time ago, I could have prevented a lot of the pain that I've experienced in life. I could have prevented a lot of the damage that's been done to not only just my brain. I mean, I had 180 people working for me. I could do anything on a fly, and now I can barely form a sentence some days, because that is what the disorder does. It devastates your mind. It takes not only just your peace and calm, but it also takes your focus and it's so much more than what people even try to understand. So much so, Kelly, that there are doctors that won't even treat people with borderline personality disorder because it's a liability risk for them, because most of the time it ends badly. And it's not just people who have experienced the type of abuse that I experienced, our returning military men. Um, I mean, I don't know if people understand that, when they come back to the United States as, regular citizens, if they're not gainfully employed within the first 2 years, they end up in the Department of Corrections by the end of the second year. Is that how we honor our vets? Is that how we honor the people who in this country, our children? People think, oh, trauma and suck it up, buttercup. It's not that easy. Kids are not programmed to handle trauma.
Yeah.
And we have to get down and acknowledge and teach them how to accept their, what God's handed to them, or whatever their path is, and to teach them to love themselves. And the face of trauma is so many different things. It could be a pet dying, or losing a grandparent, or being bullied at school. But these things have to be acknowledged and dealt with when they're young. Otherwise, you're going to still have that revolving door in the Department of Corrections. You're still going to have suicide rampant across the United States. These things in the United States puts less energy, effort, and resources into mental health than any other country in the world. And why is that? Because we're that so insensitive to the fact that that people just have to get over it and not be so sensitive. It's not that. We have to teach these young people coping skills before they experience trauma and throughout, and acknowledge it. And nothing hurts more than to just be dismissed when you're hurting. So, I mean, and your organization, I was introduced to it from a friend. And I reached out to you. I looked you up because I'm one of those people stalkers. And and I was impressed with the fact that you are a trauma coach, and that you are passionate about helping the youth of America, because that's our future. If our children can't cope with the things that they have facing them now, how are they going to take care of us?
Yeah.
When we're old. Um, You know, it's important to, I mean, we're not gonna, we're not gonna have them live there, in their pain, but they have to learn how to cope with it, accept it, and move on from it. And without the proper tools and support, whether it be in the schools and teaching parents and siblings and people how to stand up for themselves, you can't get in a fist fight anymore to show someone how, how they're treating you badly, So what do? You bottle it up. That's so much worse. I mean, my husband's showing signs of schizophrenia, and he refuses to go get treated, and it's sad because I know what the value of being treated can do for someone's, especially for myself, because I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have the chance to see my grandkids grow up, or hear my kids tell me that they love me, and a lot of people don't get that chance at a very young age because they don't know where to go. They don't know who to talk to. And if you can't talk to your parents, you got to have somebody in your life, somebody who you can confide in to work through the pain of whatever you've experienced.
Yeah, and I know when we had originally talked, you told me that your trauma really started when you were 6 years old. Do you want to explain?
Yeah, I was first molested when I was 6 years old, by two family members. Um, I was 6. I didn't know. My dad caught them, and they were never prosecuted. It was hushed, pushed under the rug, and they continued beyond that point. The family dynamic was as close to as with my sibling, and being my dad's only child, um, he sent me to Colorado to save me because he didn't know how to save me. But what he did was he abandoned me, and I just lost him this year in February. And I had missed 26 years of his life. Who he was a phenomenal man. He did a lot of really cool things before he had me, or him and my mom had me. And my brother, who is very, very sick, pretty much shut me out. And when my dad died and everything, and he wasn't even his kid. Well, I ended up having to be the one to bury him. And, you know, after I grew up and became a teenager, it affected all of my intimate relationships, whether it be with friends. I was always that bugaboo, you know, and I was always worried about, what other people thought, and a people pleaser, and always trying to do things for everyone else. And because that's all I knew how to make myself feel better. Completely selfish. And uh, completely selfish. Sorry about that. I thought I had
No worries. That's okay.
my phone has a mind of its own. And if I would have had treatment back when all of this first happened, and I probably would have been a better parent. I would have been a better wife, a better friend to a lot of people. And I would have been healthier myself and been able to acknowledge the pain. Being diagnosed with borderline personality changed my life.
Yeah. When do you feel like, I mean, it just makes me curious. When do you feel like the onset of the borderline personality disorder? Like, is there like a moment in your life that you can be like, I'm pretty sure at this moment is like when I should have been diagnosed?
I was probably 17 or 18, I think, the first time I tried to kill myself.
Gotcha.
And I took a whole bottle of sleeping pills and didn't even go to sleep. Imagine that. Wow. But that's the way the chemicals in my brain work. So people have to understand that too. When I'm in pain, I don't get narcotics because of this. I don't get, which is a good thing. So, I don't need to become an opiate addict. But I was probably about 17 or 18. I graduated from school, high school, 6 months early. But I was always the fat kid, fat redheaded stepchild is what I used to always say. And I always had bad self-image. And then when it got into my relationships for me were always quickly engaged in sex. And that's how, And so but what that did was once the sex wasn't there or wasn't fulfilling to that other person, the relationship was gone. So there was nothing ever constant or permanent in my life. My parents divorced when I was 6 months old. And my mom used to always say kids were the crabgrass on the long knife. I mean, for God's sake, she put a fat kid in a tutu and because she wanted to be a ballerina. So she lived vicariously through me. And that was horrible. That was a horrible experience for me. Because I was fat and I was a chubby kid and I didn't have any, still to this day, don't have any rhythm, which is okay. And I got good ear though for music, but that was probably the borderline personality because of the disorder. It encompasses multiple. I think it's 5. I think you have 5 more morbid diagnosis, I think is what goes along with it. And so you have to fall into anxiety, depression, or all of those, or those, that's how they follow. Well, in Colorado, I even had a psychiatrist look me in the face and go, yeah, you could probably get away with killing somebody. And then I told him I had a list and he didn't find that funny. But apparently that's not part of the whole deal.
Right.
But the whole fact is that because I do have such poor impulse control and poor coping skills, I went to jail for the first time when I was over 40 for a domestic, and I spent 12 hours in handcuffs because I wouldn't shut up. And those types of things would have never happened in my life. How do you turn this thing off? Those things would have never happened in my life if I would have had the treatment as a child to be able to work through and learn coping skills that are important for you to be able to have the proper, mind control or, the proper control. I always wore my emotions on my sleeves and I was always I wasn't a bully, but I could definitely, if people didn't get their job done, I did it for them. And so when I went through life and I changed, I made a lot of people a lot of money, but when it came down to making myself money or being successful personally, I wasn't able to do it because I didn't have the depth of sense of self that I needed. And I later found out that I didn't pass that on to my kids very well. I did the best that I could, raising my kids pretty much alone. My ex-husband was an alcoholic. And my kids are phenomenal. I don't know how that happened, but and we talk all the time, and we talk and we share, we have an open line of communication about, the different things that they experienced and things like that. And, when I first found out that my daughter had tried to kill herself a few years ago, because of the same reason that I tried. And it was heartbreaking. I had no idea. Why couldn't my daughter come to me? Well, she couldn't come to me because I myself was not even admitting that there was a problem. I'd overcome it. I put it away. I didn't have daddy issues. I wasn't out there stripping or, being a prostitute or doing any of those things. But what I did have was poor people skills. And being a people person, it didn't work out so well sometimes. But if I'd have known how devastating the disorder was on my life, I could have changed the path of my kids' life so that they could be aware but not affected.
Yeah.
And for that, I'll have to work through the rest of my life. Right now I'm I still deal with the loss of my dad because I only got just a few months with him, and everyone who took my dad for everything that he had during his life, none of them showed up to the funeral or paid respects, but here I'm the one having to bury the guy. And I never asked my parents for anything, but when I left my ex-husband, I wanted to be 19 again and start life all over. And so I decided to date a drug dealer, and because everybody else had, and I didn't get to, so I thought I'd try it, and it didn't turn out well for me, obviously. And uh, you know, those choices, I would have probably never been homeless. People don't understand the effects of homelessness on people with a mental disorder or a mental disease. Being homeless is, you don't have a happy place to go to. You live in constant fear, constant certainty. You live in a constant um chase for survival just to get through today. I mean, when you think of, oh well, I could probably skip a meal, think about, I'm not thinking about skipping one meal. I'm thinking about never ever being able to eat again. I'm never being able to have a place of my own. And these communities have got to come together. You stop spending all this money on the Department of Corrections and revolving that door that just keeps people coming in and out, and healing these people before they get there.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. This is just this society is, and most of the people who make the decisions probably have their own damn disorder in the first place. But they're not willing to face it. And because if they don't acknowledge it, then they don't have it.
Right.
But you know, it's troublesome that it's so widely spoken about now, but there's not policies that's not been changed. I mean, when a person who is on disability who makes $1,400 a month, and granted that is the most that you get because I got the most, has to try to find a place to live in Denver.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's not possible.
No.
It is not possible. And then you look at affordable housing, and even just affordable housing alone has a 5-year wait list. Section 8 has an 8 to 10-year wait list.
Wow.
And you can't go live in a shelter because you can't function. You can't to live in a shelter and have a mental disorder is nearly impossible, because people don't understand your dynamic. They don't understand how to communicate with you or how to empathize with you. So you end up in this constant chaos in your mind while you're there. Therefore, you can't focus on getting the services that you need. And that's another thing. Some of the services that are, the nonprofits that are out there, and I applaud you, Kelly, for, putting so much passion into it. Just make sure that what you're doing is helpful, because so much of this nonprofit money or this philanthropic money that's being used out there is just resource references. People aren't getting case management. There has to be case management, because we alone, we can't navigate the system.
Yeah.
It's too hard. You sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait for an answer, when that person can get a hold of that person who knows that person to get it done. And I mean, like the SOAR program, that's how I got my disability was, and granted, I made 80 grand a year, so it's not like I was not a productive part of society.
Yeah.
How I got that is through the SOAR program. And that is, it's a program that's focused and trains mental health professionals on how to case manage to get people approved for disability. But how many people even know that it exists? There's a couple programs that are in Colorado that are, it's tragic. I don't want to say it like this, but are shit, because all they do is transfer references.
Yeah.
And, if that's all you're going to do as a case manager is give someone a reference and tell them to call, you're not doing that justice, and you're not doing that person who's donating that money justice either, because that person's still going to end up on the streets. They're going to end up in either the Department of Corrections, in the mental, in inpatient, further straining more and more resources. And the fact that, when it comes to the medical treatment, they think, oh, it's just a behavioral that you have to adjust or modify your behavior. That's not true. The physical effects of a disorder on the brain are not only long lasting, but irreversible.
Yeah.
And I was brilliant. I was a brilliant professional. And now I can't even write a letter to my kids. because I have no focus. There's certain tools that you can use for things like that and do that, but without case management, without someone sitting here going, okay, we're going to meet once a week and we're going to talk about this and how's this therapy doing for you, and continuing the therapy and continuing to not only help that individual become a part, be a part of society and a healthy part of society, but also teaching them skills that they can, maybe pass on to other people that just, really don't understand what they're going through.
Mhm.
And we have to change that in this country. We have to look at the other countries that are successfully managing their mental health. Um, there is a test that a person can have tested to decide whether or not they're going to give them an MAOI or an
Mm.
SSRI or whatever chemical or prescription is going to help them to be able to manage the physical effects of whatever their mental illness is. It's one test, and that no one gives that person that test. And if they, so rather than be able to find out, take a blood test to find out what drugs are going to help me,
Mm.
I'm a guinea pig. They're going to give
Right.
me a coma cocktail and you know I mean, don't give you 4 benzos and say don't take them all at the same time.
Right. Yeah, that was something interesting when we had originally talked that you told me, and it was something that I didn't even know either. I mean, I'm not like in the medical space to understand that part, but I thought it was really interesting to know that there is an actual test that you can take to know which is going to work with your body chemicals, which is huge, especially for your brain. And like you were saying, I mean, the trauma on a brain from a mental health challenge or illness or any trauma in general causes irreversible effects, and it's things that we don't talk about enough at all. So I love that you brought that up.
It's so important because although the effects are irreversible, they can be managed with
Yeah.
the proper medication, with the proper therapy, behavioral therapy, and things like that, so that reteach, because you have to reteach your brain.
Mhm.
Your brain said, whenever the trauma happened to you, the brain says, well, this is the only way I know, so I'm going to go the long way around.
Yeah.
And because I don't have a direct path to fix this, and so it's always going to go the long way around. So what gets lost in translation is everything, the side roads on the outside.
Yeah.
And excuse me for sniffling.
No, you're
um
good.
and that's the important thing, is that we have to look further. It's no different than people with thyroid disease or the leaky gut. And I'm sure I've noticed that you have, some intuitive information as far as, when it comes to healthy eating and things like that. That, in the United Kingdom, they hardly treat ADHD with any medication anymore.
Mm.
What they do, they use diet, they use they t- I mean, there's things that can be done to help the body get through these things, as well as to help the mind. And but they just want the easy road out. And then, I mean, how barbaric is that physicians, psychiatrists who go to school to teach, to learn these tools to help people, will refuse someone treatment who's going to kill themselves if they don't get it.
Yeah. No, and
Or
it's
someone else.
important. That nutrition piece is so important too. And I've heard that multiple times. My nephew is a type 1 diabetic, and there's places that like the Gerson therapy that is all whole foods, right?
Yeah.
Like that's how that's how it's cured. But yet in America, we throw drugs at it, right? Like
Right. Exactly. I mean, you know, you give someone who's coming off of heroin, you give them methadone.
right.
So then they're
Yeah.
going to be addicted to methadone for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Rather than putting them through a immunal uh, therapy program.
Mm.
Why are they on heroin anyway? Probably because they had some sort of trauma in their life
Yeah.
that took them to the point to where they needed to have some relief. And drug addicts just don't become drug addicts because that's what they want to do with their lives. I mean, seriously.
Right.
You don't become an alcoholic because, oh, that's, what I want to do. I'm going to drink and be stupid and have my liver, kill me and, watch my family be sad. No, that's not why people become addicts. They become addicts because either they don't have access to the healthcare to get them to, where they whether it be coping skills or dealing with pain or the anxiety or just, any of that, or that's just what their parents did. So it makes sense, or before. That's where the generational crisis comes in, is that the prisons are going to continue to get fuller. The hospitals are going to continue to fill if we don't address this where it starts, when it starts, and how it starts.
Yeah.
I mean, how does a pedophile get 10 years, but a guy doing his job was facing 105? Come on now.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't happen in other countries.
Yeah. Well, and we need to, like you said, like, we need to evaluate, like, what is actually going on, not just like take it for face value. I mean, if you think about social media, right? Like, everybody shows the best side, or sometimes people do show the bad side, but really, like, what's that underlying cause? What is the thing? What's that 6-year-old trying to tell us that we
Right.
didn't even learn or know? And how do we start having those conversations, whether they're uncomfortable or not? Let's have these and get it out in the open, and now start to transform and change what is going on with humans in general.
Exactly. Columbine would have never happened if they would have asked the kids how to solve it. What would have
Yes.
worked for the kids? We can no longer sit in our living rooms, look out our windows and go, not my problem. It is our problem.
Yes.
And our kids are the ones who are going to be able to solve it. Not the professionals, not the people with the PhDs. The kids are the ones who are going to be able to solve it because they have the answers. They just need a voice.
Yes.
And because I can tell you, I guarantee you, sit at a table with a bunch of kids in elementary school, they are not going to hide telling you what they think would make things better.
No, definitely, my 6-year-old, he tells me, like, and that's where I've gotten to, is like, if I don't understand, I'm going to go ask a kid, because they're going to know more than I do. And they really, they don't think with the rational part of their brain, but it's actually a good thing in that instance, because now we understand better. Like, they don't live in fear. They don't live in this fear of what comes out of their mouth. So listening and hearing and asking those questions from our youth, I think, is really, really important.
Tact is something we teach later when it
Right.
matters.
Right.
I always told my children, you know what, I think that's one of the blessings I was able to give them, is that I always told them, you know what, you have a voice.
Yeah.
It may not make any difference to me whether or not it matters or not. But my daughter, I remember, she's 4 years old. She was going to run away, and I told her to shut the door. And oh man, she got mad, but she had a voice.
Yeah.
And I never told my kids no, and I never told them to shut up. I figured I didn't want them to tell me no, so I wasn't going to tell them no. I always gave them a reason. That could hurt you. That's, you're not old enough. You can say all the cuss words you want when you're 18, but until then, I get to choose.
Yeah.
Or, because they have to have boundaries. Kids want boundaries.
Yes.
But they do. Teenagers may not, but if you're trying to put boundaries on a teenager and you didn't give them boundaries when they were 5, you're fucked.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because you're backtracking it, and it's not going to help. You're going to have to deal with a whole bunch of other stuff, because even boundaries, not giving a child boundaries and giving them sense of self and value at a young age is abuse, in my opinion. It's neglect. And that people don't realize that not having a strong male figure in a young girl's life determines how she will have relationships later in life. How those relationships will affect her, the meaningfulness of those relationships, and how long they will last, and the level of commitment and happiness in there. And it has to be. We can't always be, because dad can't always be there. You can't always have a dad, but to have a strong male figure in some way or another. But single moms are scared to have men in their children's lives because, you got the creepy crawlers, and I get it. So trust me, I get it. One from experience, but it's up to us as parents to find that individual one way or another who can affect your child the way that they're meant to, so that they can be happy, healthy, and mindful.
Yeah.
And it starts with boundaries. And but how do we teach our kids boundaries if we ourselves don't have them ourselves?
Yeah.
And it's a family epidemic. The families can't just sit there and go, I'm going to put my kid in front of the TV, and then the worst thing I ever did was send my kids to school, because they learn from other children. And and I was like, my goodness, you really learned. Oh my goodness, why did I even send you to school?
I think it's important too to acknowledge that we do the best that we can with the resources that we have at
Yes.
the time. And like you said, had you been diagnosed at an earlier age, you probably would have had so many more resources as you were aging and you had your children and everything, right? Like
Oh yeah.
all of these things would have been presented a lot earlier. So I think it's good.
Parenting courses or parenting support
Yeah.
would have been a much more of a priority, instead of thinking I could do it on my own.
Right.
That's a huge thing, is that we have to provide those resources, but then we also have to get them there. And that's, it takes a village to raise a child. I know when I was 9 years old and I was walking down the street smoking a cigarette, my dad knew before I got home
Yeah.
that I was smoking a cigarette. I couldn't get away with anything, but these kids nowadays, oh, don't talk. No, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to bring your child to you. We can't be afraid to step in when a parent, and not in a violent way, not in an aggressive way, to step in a loving, supportive, community way when a parent doesn't have the tools or the time, because we're overwhelmed in this country with job, paying the bills, and nothing happens cohesively.
Right.
And so when you see a parent that's struggling, don't call CPS on them.
Ask what you can do to help them.
Exactly. If they need, you got a parent they lost their home or they lost their place because they couldn't go to work because their kid was sick. So then they lose their kid. What does that do to the kid? What does that do to how do you rip 4 kids away from a family instead of giving them the tools that they needed to save that family, to become better, productive parents, to to raise better children?
Yeah.
No, you just rip them away and put them in foster care, and that's the answer? No, because then these children not only get to deal with the other bullshit that they already had to deal with, but now they've got abandonment on top of it. And boy, isn't that a biggie.
I know definitely abandonment is something that you and I had talked about, that comes up for you more often than not also.
Yeah, it does. A lot.
Yeah.
Because, my mom asked me one time, she says, don't you feel you're worth being loved? I just looked at her, I said, no.
Wow.
How many times have you turned your back on me, Mom? She just recently told me that she didn't turn her back on me. And I was the good kid. Okay. Trust me. I was the good kid. But no, she said she put me on hold. She didn't turn her back on me. She put me on hold. I was like, well, that's going to need therapy. Because how do you tell a child, I put you on hold because I couldn't deal with you at that time. You know what? We are blessed with these children when we give birth to them. And it is our commitment, it is our responsibility to raise them in the time that we have, because it's very little and it's getting shorter and shorter. Yeah. And these kids count on us, and it's not anybody else's responsibility to raise them, but it is a community's responsibility to make sure that their citizens are being given the right tools, given the right opportunities, given the right support, so that they can do the best that they can, which is love their children.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It is really, really sad because you have complacent, um, uh, uh, what do they call them? Human. See, there it goes. You have complacent uh, human services workers. You have social workers that are resource managers. They're not case managers.
Gotcha.
And if you go out there and you ask any one of these programs that are out there now that list, okay, well, we help, we do this or whatever, ask them what a day in their life looks like in their job. And I bet you will find it's nothing more than pushing paperwork and sharing resources instead of picking up the phone and saying, okay, I've got this person over here at Cross Disability Network. I've got this person over here at housing. I've got this person here. Let's get this person housed. Let's get this person healthcare. Let's get this person off the streets. Let's get this person off of drugs. Those sorts of things. You're not going to get someone off of drugs if they don't have a stable life.
Yeah.
You're not going to get them a job if they don't have a stable life.
Yeah.
I mean, people think, oh, why don't they just get a job and then things will be better? No, it doesn't work that way.
No.
I mean, to get a job, people won't hire you unless you have a stable, you can get to work every day. You can shower. You can be a productive employee. Right. How do you do that if you're constantly wondering where you're going to sleep?
Yeah. I mean, that brings up a good point, even in the nonprofit spaces. Like, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing, right? Like, how do we, as a collaborative effort, do it together versus, and it's really disjointed. And I think like corporations are very much the same. They're like very disjointed, but that's one of those things that like, I love collaborating with other people, like, because you have a specialty that I may not have.
Right.
And how can we help each other? Because we're really trying to get the same end result and get more people that understand and more resources and more help that people can actually like tangible tools.
Kelly, go out there after today, rest of the week, go out there and find out how many people that within the nonprofit services, community services, know anything about the SOAR program or how to come about it.
Probably not many. I mean, it's one that you educated me on. So I appreciate that, and definitely something I'll look into for sure.
Well, and then we were talking about Youth on Record, and I'll send you that information. I meant to, but Youth on Record, when we talk about treating kids and acknowledging them and where they're at within trauma and things like that, music is one of the tools that across the board has shown more promise in helping these children to work through trauma and abandonment, because it gives them something valuable, and it teaches them not only technique and focus and things like that, but it gives them something that they can feel, they can hear. It's instant gratification too. And Youth on Record is a program that focuses on inner city kids that otherwise wouldn't have a chance. And now these kids are going to college, getting with the community where you have accountability advocates with the police department, and instead of being fearful of government, let's engage with government. Let's show them what it is that they're missing, and together being accountable as people who are passionate about helping one another and helping their community, getting together and creating an accountability, where, there's, and I don't want to say a report card, but there's a check and a balance as far as how the money is to be utilized. If you give someone a resource, you better give them a name of somebody to call it that resource.
Definitely.
There's got to be, you can't just give them a phone number and then hope that someone's going to call them back, because there's, other 100 people that are calling. And I have more resources available to me than 211. And that's because I have worked for those resources. Because I used to help individuals with barriers find careers, because I got tired of people saying, do you hire felons? I didn't remember felon being on a birth certificate, but
right.
We need to not define ourselves by the negativity.
Yeah.
We can overcome barriers, and we can empower and inspire our children to dream, because if they have a dream, they have a purpose. And if they have a purpose, they have a future. And if they have a future, they can do anything.
Yeah.
But they're not going to carry guns with a purpose.
No. definitely not. No,
You know,
and
you're
I love that you brought up, I mean, just the connections, right? Like for me, I only partner with more so like the holistic aspect, but people that I can have a direct connect into, like the Aurora mental health center. I have a name that I can give somebody. It's not like I'm just like, oh, go talk to the Aurora mental health. Like I have a name that you can call her and she will answer your questions and she will get you into their system and
well,
make
and along
sure.
with that too, Kelly, don't mean to interrupt, but along with
No,
that too,
yeah.
is you reaching out to her and saying, how can I help you do your job?
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's all about those collaborations, the back and forth, not so much like the one ways, right? Like
Right.
I always a question that I have is like, how can I help you and how can you help me? And I don't need it to be all about me. Like how can I help you too? So,
Right. And then there's the the peer counselings, the peer
mm,
counselors, the peer um uh they do it through, I think it's through DU. You might have to find out, but where um people who have graduated so much of the uh mental health program, you know, if they've
mhm,
gone through Seeking Safety and they've done all of these or whatever, they've done everything like this, they go back into the facilities and they then advocate and counsel and support other individuals that were like them
yeah,
on how to get through it. And that's huge. If anybody wants to donate any money to anyone, it's someone who has found a solution to be able to be a productive, successful, healthy part of society, and that they and have the passion to give it back.
yeah, definitely.
And so that's what we have to do. It's not just, you know, that's that person's job. When, you know, what is your job, Kelly? What is it that you want BCC to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I mean, definitely like the education piece is key for us. So you were talking about, I mean, youth in general. We're actually designing a program that's called Give Youth a Voice. And
Yes.
it's really all centered around middle school students so that they can understand like what is it all about mental health? Why do I have all these hormones going through my body? And what are the resources and the tools that I have? So really getting into the schools and making sure that we talk to them specifically, not just the teachers, not just the parents, giving them the actual resources that they need. But we're going to design it with the youth, or excuse me, with any middle school students specifically, so that we know it's useful for them. Because my thing, right, is that I would hate to design something that's not useful. And I
Right.
don't
Or
want to
that
have
people
this.
aren't going to use because it's either
Yeah.
complicated or it requires too much on their behalf.
Yeah, well, and
Um,
if it's not in their language and it's not something that is even helpful for them, there's no point of even designing it in
exactly.
my mind.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I
And
mean,
so Youth on Record would be an incredible connection for you to, and Michael Acuna, and I'll send you his information. I was started to send you his Westward thing. He's all about mentoring young men and things like that too as well. And he's
awesome.
actually an accountability officer for the Denver Police Department.
Awesome.
And he's phenomenal musician as well. Those would be people to reach out to ask, how did you do this? What were your obstacles? How did you overcome them? How can I help to be more engaged in what it is? Because we can, as adults, can talk to we're blue in the face, but if we don't have that puppy monkey baby to get that kid engaged in hearing what we have to say, it's pointless.
Exactly.
And
So
so,
we are coming to our time.
oh my God, I can't believe we did that.
I know. See, you lasted the whole time. I'm so proud of you. What is your final thoughts, or what is your best advice to somebody that maybe is struggling or experiencing a mental health challenge? Or what is the one thing that you want viewers to take away today?
Listen to your kids,
Mm, I love that. Yes.
hear them, ask them. They're little adults, you know. They have just as much to say, and listen to them and love them and ask for help.
Yeah. Ask for help.
because we
Well,
can't do it on our own.
right. Takes a village.
Yep, it does take a village. And Denver is a beautiful place, and I would love anything more than anything to be there because Michigan is an abyss. People come in, they don't come out.
Right. Well, you're going to come out one day.
Yeah, as soon as I get over the sickness. But anyway,
Right.
thank you so much, Kelly. Keep
Yeah.
up the good work. Stay passionate. Don't let anybody dim your brightness.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. This was amazing. And you had so many incredible nuggets that you gave to the audience. So thank you so much for joining
And
me
if you ever
today.
need anything, let me know.
I
I'm always a
will.
wealth of information. I just don't share as much as I used to because nobody cared.
Hey, I care.
There
So
you
I
go.
appreciate
So
you.
this
Thank
might
you
turn
so
out to
much.
be a good collaboration.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Thanks, Kelly.
joining. All right. That was our episode of Mental Health Mondays. And I am so grateful and thankful for you joining us today. If any of this was useful, please like, subscribe, share it with somebody that you know can use this information. Again, we don't talk about trauma enough when our youth is involved. Like Alex said, ask the questions, love, and have those hard conversations. It's not something that we want to do, but it definitely is something that we need to do. And if this is useful content for you, help us to continue this and become a warrior for mental health today on the bccevolution.org website, or just go look us up like Alex did. Be a people stalker, stalk the BCC Evolution page, see what we're up to, and help us by donating and or whatever you can give us. If you want to be a guest, send us an email at support@bccevolution.org. And I just really appreciate you joining us today. And we'll see you next week. We do this every Monday. It's pretty awesome. And I've had some amazing, amazing guests, and I can't wait for you to meet the lineup. We have people already signed up through February. So I hope this was useful. Again, like, subscribe, comment, make sure that you are sharing this information, because the more we talk about it and the more that we have these conversations, the more we're really going to start breaking down the stigma and actually saving lives. Thank you so much. Have a great day.